All right, we are live for another week of Growing with My Fellow Growers. I'm your host, Jack Greensock, joined as always by an amazing panel. I'm going to pass it over first to Spartan Grown. Welcome back.
Thanks, Jack. I'm Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word, no spaces. If you don't do social media, you can shoot me an email at spartangrown@gmail.com or russ@gmlarmy.com, and I'd be happy to answer all your growing and lighting questions.
Always happy to have you. And it does seem some weeks we get really into lighting, and some weeks we don't even touch it at all. So it's always interesting whether we talk grow, technology, or other related or unrelated things. But with that said, our only other panelist we have currently with us right now is Noah the Grower. So welcome, Noah.
Hello, welcome everybody. Yeah, I'm Noah the Grower on Instagram. It's too easy. My name, you can find me there. If you have any questions on what I got going on, you can shoot me a direct message and I'll always try to get back to all of them. And yeah, ready to get into it.
Good stuff. Well, make sure to click on over to the live chat or view all messages if you're on YouTube live with us right now. And you can go ahead and start asking us questions. Tag us at Cheap Home Grow. So it'll pop up in orange for me. I see Weed Nerd DWC has done so just to say cheers, Noah, Tao, cheers, etc. I don't know if Tao's here yet. Maybe he's in the chat. Red Sitter Farm, Marcus Green Thumb, Iceni, and others all showing up. Seed Person 1. Cheers to all of you. Happy Sunday, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. But yeah, it's been a little bit of a crazy week. And it's kind of ironic that we talked about something last week that related to something that happened this week, but I don't even really want to get into it. We'll keep it on the Grow Q&A today because everywhere else you look, I am sure you cannot help but be bombarded by news media of some sort. Because even if you're not looking for it, it'll show up in fucking memes, it'll show up in the whatever. And everybody knows what I'm talking about. But like I said, this is Growing with My Fellow Growers, not Politics 101. So we'll keep that stuff to the side for now. And yeah, it's fascinating times we live in, I'll say that. And happy that we're still able to keep on doing what we're doing here. Use our free speech to get the good word out there. And I'm kind of apolitical. I'm mainly just pro cannabis and pro peace. Fucking let us grow weed and not fucking kill each other. That's always a good thing. We got Marcus Green Thumb in the chat, Supreme Grape. It looks like a lot of the regulars, Crispy Wannabe and Smart Poker. I almost jumped on to the Sunday morning show this morning with those two. Always good to see them. Um, totally brain farting on the name of their show. What's the Sunday morning show? Smart and Crispy.
Dazed and confused.
Dazed and Confused. Sundazed and Confused. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's a cool name.
I like that for sure. I'm smoking on a little Runts Cross here. That's got me a little dazed and confused. Not the sharpest. I just did a little yoga. I was really crystal clear, and I came home and took a few bong bowls to the face, and now I'm a little spacey, but I'm having fun,
Nice.
feeling good. Can't complain. It was a little hot here. Well, not actually, because everywhere else in the actual country is hot, and we're in like the 70s. But when it gets humid, it feels a lot warmer, and everybody wants to tend to complain about whatever thing that is around them. But uh, I know having been, oh, there's Tao. He's jumping in. Having lived in Florida, what real humidity and heat is actually
Oh
like.
my
And
God, yeah,
my wife
dude.
is from Arizona, and I'll visit there occasionally, and sometimes it is quite hot. Well, the American one has joined us, so welcome, Tao. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, Jack and panel and everyone in chat. I am the American one on the YouTube and the American one underscore with underscore 18th over on the IG. And yeah, I'm glad I made it, even though I'm a little late. The time slipped by, you know what I'm saying?
Hey, it's all good, man. They shouted you out in the chat, and it was like prophetic because you ended up showing up after I even
It was the
mentioned
rock
it.
star entrance, man. Just a little bit late. People were waiting for you. They thought you weren't going to be here, and boom, you show up and just give them what they want.
There you go. Perfect anticipation.
That's what's up. Got to build it up, build up that anticipation. And I was wrong earlier. I said a Runts Cross. Well, it is a Runts Cross. It's lemon cherry Runts, and I'm not really a big lemon cherry gelato fan, so I think it might be that cross to Runts. But I do like Runts, so Runts is probably carrying because it is pretty good stuff. Smells good, smokes good, tastes good, gets me where I need to go.
Yeah, I recently ran that one. I wasn't too impressed either. I already cut it. I hear you.
The lemon cherry gelato or lemon cherry Runts?
Yeah, lemon cherry gelato. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. I've smoked it so many times, and it's just like meh. Doesn't
Yeah,
have the.
the weed was just okay. And then it was also like a super small yielder, definitely not worth the headaches. And what's really weird is it was like a supposedly a hard to get clone. I was just like, yeah, see what her.
It's just because it's still on the modern hype train. So like some people are trying to hold it close to their chest or be the one who, makes the most off of it in the early time. But that only lasts so long. People are going to start saying they have it whether they do or not. So you're going to be competing against pounds of other stuff and then having your brand get degraded by people that are growing other stuff.
I push against that so much. I'm like, nobody has your grow. Nobody's gonna grow it like you do exactly and grow it in the same media so agreement to grow it in the same environment. So don't be stingy with your cuts because if you lose it, you'll never get it back. But if you're not
Exactly.
stingy with your cuts and you get them out there to people and people that you like at least, you can ask for that cut back when you lose that cut. So it's a huge advantage to have. So I really encourage people to at least have, maybe you don't have to give it to 12 people, you don't have to give it to 50 people. You could give it to 4 or 5 people maybe,
You
but
should even one or
have
two
some
is enough
backups.
sometimes. More the better, but
Yeah. The only ones I'm stingy with is like for right now, the only cut that I probably in my whole garden that I probably wouldn't give out is like Bliss Bud if somebody asked for it because I'm still working that line. That's not like my for sure confirmed final uh product of it or whatever I guess you want to call it. So I don't want to get other iterations out of it. I want to get the one that I want. So that's probably the only one that I would be picky on just holding on to for now.
it's interesting. It makes me think of like I went to Italy and saw the statue of David. And when you go, you kind of expect, at least I did, just kind of like walk into a museum and see a bunch of shit, and then like you're gonna see the statue of David, like big stone carving of this guy. But when you get there, at least if you go to the one that I was in, I may get moved around, but I think it's pretty much always in the same museum for the most part. You walk past like a 20% done carving and then like a 30% done carving, like ones that he started and he's like, ah, fuck this, I'm gonna go to another one. And then he did like a 40% and a 50% and a 60%. Like eventually you get to the one where it's like, oh shit, there's the final thing. But you see all the step changes up. And like with Bliss Bud, it makes me think of like anything, Velvet Punch F1 to 2 to 3, or any step change of progress that you're like slowly making. And you can see, you can even reference back, like, oh, this is that step in Bliss Blood when it was just this cross to that. And then here's where I added the sour, and here's where I added this. And it does make differences and changes. So I'm excited to see where that project ultimately wraps up and you feel it is ready for people to have in their own hands as well. But I agree, if you grow it in your environment, I have a buddy who is, I don't know, less than 10 minutes down the road, and we are on the exact same distance to the ocean. We're on the exact same elevation. We're in the same city. Like I was using the same nutrients. I was growing under the same lights. I was doing everything. He was mentoring me. He showed me the fucking ropes. And then he gave me one of his cuts after I was started smashing it on my own stuff. And I gave him like a sample bud that he was like, oh man, I treasure this shit. And so he like gave me one of his tightly held, like long standing cuts that I just never asked for, but he had extras. And he's like, hey, would you want one of these? And I was like, yes. So took it and grew it. And mine was different than his. And they were close, but like his definitely was better. And I was better in my opinion because I was used to how it grew in his environment. So to Spartan's point, it's just like I feel like if I got the cereal milk cut from Cannabiotics that I love so much, I'm sure it would grow decent to good, but it wouldn't be exactly what I remember from them because what they do in their environment with their nutrients and their lighting and their I like to call them caregivers because they're usually helping people with medical ailments, but they're also caregiving to the plant. And um, I think that some of those are the best growers, but the growers in general are what they do. Every input, I think, has a factor. Even like when you walk over, if some guy put his arm out just because he's like, I don't know if you ever see, like if you watch people at work, they'll do random weird shit. Like they'll like skip around or like just like waste a little bit of time or just like on A to B instead of walking in a straight line, they might just like, take a little curvy path or like put their arms up and down or just like some little weird idiosyncrasies. Like I saw a video at somebody's grow and this guy, whenever he'd walk over, he would hover his hands over the plants just like to see how high they were. And I'm like, I know it's minor, but like that's like a little bit of light that's being blocked every single day, every single time that guy walks down that path. And I'm like, you gotta tell that guy to not do that. It might actually fuck with your plants over time. Maybe it's not enough, and maybe it's actually making them better. I don't know, but it's just like he doesn't have to do it, and it might have a negative consequence. And so I'm just like, but who knows? Maybe that is like the secret sauce. All those little things have a cumulative sort of score going towards your final end product. And you can do a lot right and you can do a lot wrong. And then there's probably a lot in between that we're still figuring out to get to an ultimately successful harvest. But a lot of people do it different ways, and it's fun to observe the different idiosyncrasies in certain gardens. I know my buddy, like Vegan Doja, like the dude who made the Velvet Punch, F1, he would like drum in his greenhouse. He would sing to his plants. He would be out there in like the morning, like doing yoga and like it's in nature. So there's like birds chirping and shit. Like there's a lot of factors that play into, I think, every single plant, and everybody's situation is truly different. So I'm with Spartan 1,000%, share that cut. Somebody else isn't going to grow it the same that you can. It might be better. It might be worse. It might be different, but it's almost assuredly not going to be the exact same thing.
Well, that's
The
the
grow
thing
off has shown
too.
it.
The growers' egos tend to be pretty fucking big, and they're not even thinking that, oh, they could grow better than me. That could happen. It could be a better fucking, they could come back with a better representation with it and bless you with a fucking sack of some sweet weed. So yeah, man, I think usually you make out for sharing.
That happened to me with seeds. I sent fucking a guy on this very panel, the American one, some Velvet Punch F2. And somehow, some way, a sample from his garden made it into my hands. And it tasted like watermelon Jolly Ranchers, just like he fucking said. And it blew me away because I hadn't had that phenotype. And I'd grown a lot of Velvet Punch up to that point, especially the F2. And funny enough, it started peeking out in F3s a little bit more, but he was the first and only one who called that out. Maybe one other person since then. But if you don't share, you don't get to find that out. If I just did all the in-house testing, if I just hoarded the seeds to myself and it was, oh, I've got all these seeds, I can hang on to them for years or whatever. I could have done that, but instead, it's like you shared, just like he shared with me. I grew Amy Aces. I got to see what his stuff was like. I got to see what Spartan stuff is like, and I hope to grow all the homies gear out eventually, if and when I can. If it seems interesting, I'll give it a shot. So that's a big part of the beauty of growing.
I always love it popping that new seed. Popping another seed. It's just like forever pheno hunting, man. I love it. We just
That's
at the
me.
Track Forge, we just popped a bunch of top dog seeds, like back crosses for East Coast sour diesel. So we're gonna hunt some sour D. I'm excited for that.
It's gonna be some fire in there for sure.
Hmm.
To me, other than like the harvesting and enjoying and smoking of the cannabis or like making really good hash or product out of it, whether it's a RSO or edible or whatever, the potential excitement that comes when you get that seed sprout, like when you even like just wetting them, putting them in a paper towel or germinating it, whatever, however you go about doing it. The first few hours, like seeing the ones that actually come up and become life that were previously just this little seed sitting in your, in my case, cured or fridge or little box somewhere. And without you, it would not have come to life. And so you've brought this potential into the world, and now you can potentially be very blessed by it. Like it has changed so many people's lives. Like a single pop of a seed can make a whole brand, can build somebody up from nothing. Like there are people in this community who've literally lifted themselves out of poverty, out of difficult times, out of the country that they were in, out of the situation that they were in through cannabis cultivation and finding a unique strain or breeding something amazing and getting it out there. So I love that it has the ability to help people get out of difficult situations and in so doing, like have a great enjoyment along the way.
Absolutely. And I think, even with legalization, people get in their mind so like comfortable with cannabis being legal or that but they don't realize that we're still really in the minority as if you look at like the general population and there's probably over 50% people that are okay with people smoking cannabis, but there's not over 50% of people smoking cannabis.
Dude, I was so shocked last night. I went to a birthday party of one of my neighbors, and we're talking like 20s and 30s-year-old mostly people at this party in Southern California, San Diego. And like a pretty artsy crowd, I guess. Like a lot of people that are you would think would potentially be like open-minded. Like Lady G and I are there with we rolled up with a shit ton of weed, expecting to like smoke people out and give all this shit away to free. Of like the 35 people that were there, only one person took one hit of one joint. Everybody else was like, "Oh, I don't smoke weed." It's like, wow, holy shit. And I mean, it could be the audience that I was in. A lot of very highly productive and active people in different things. Like maybe their thing is a different thing. It might be caffeine or fucking acid or something, you know, like it could be anything. Or just straight up sober, whatever floats your boat, you know.
And
Um,
sometimes it's just the act of smoking people don't want to really do.
yeah, if you were like, I stopped smoking a year ago, I do edibles before bed. Um, and then yeah, the other thing I thought was like a lot of people maybe think, oh, I'll have to like throw on this or like match or like give, but we were like, it's free. Like my wife's like, I work in the industry, I get this shit for free. We've got it. He grows. Like we have plenty. We're happy to share. It's just like you said, not everybody's a smoker. I think some people are like closet little Benjamin, you know, rippers. They'll hit the little dab pen or little dab rigs that they can get like a Puffco or E-rig or something like that. But yeah, everybody's got a different consumption method. And I think even like there's some elderly people who just like roll a little CBD oil on their elbow or their knee or whatever, and they gain great benefit from it, or taking little gummies and things like that. There's lots of different demographics that benefit. I just
I really think in the future there's probably going to be commercially more cannabis sold in edible form than in smokable form.
probably right about
It
that.
wouldn't
And
surprise me.
I just felt like it's Southern California. Like if you would have seen the crowd, it was so shocking to me. Like where I'm from, if that crowd was with me, a huge percentage of them would have been cannabis in Ohio. Like typically people that are into like the arts are cannabis users, or like, you know, that's just a high percentage. Like I was in a ceramics class in high school, and like the person that I went over to their place, like they own like ceramic studios. So I was like, my ceramics teacher was a giant stoner in high school, and like a bunch of my classmates were also massive stoners. And I was like, I guess maybe my anecdotal experience did not apply onto this other event, but yeah, it was eye opening. I get to absolutely agree again with you, Spartan, that less people than you might think when you get insulated into a community and get used to hanging out with all of your smoking friends. When you get out into the real world, a lot of people are just like they're not even against it necessarily. They just don't use it personally. They have like no gripe.
No. Now that you say that, though, Jack, every single person that I knew of in college that was either like the one dude was ceramic, Nature Dan, we called him. He was a heavy stoner. All the art majors are definitely all heavy stoners, for sure. And yeah, I definitely am guilty of thinking everyone thinks and acts like me, which is obviously not true.
It's for the better, honestly. I'm glad that everybody is, you know, more independent and has their own experience and things like that. It'd be terrible if everybody just fell into the stereotype that we might imagine. I just think that maybe because California, it's been legal for so long, the counterculture element of like, I think some of the rebellious nature of like the guys that and girls that I knew in high school that were smoking, it was like, fuck the system, like fuck the government. Like they were also like on that sort of bandwagon. And like weed almost, I felt like tied in with that in some regards because like all the anti-dare and anti-propaganda bullshit that they've pushed and still do. And so it being legal in California, just being so commonplace, I feel like because there's no longer like a rebel, somebody said to me, they're like, I feel like since it's not illegal anymore, it's like not as fun. Like I don't have to like go to a dealer. I can like get it from you know, the store or whatever. Like I can have it delivered to
That
my
is
house. It's
fun. Yeah, it's way
Hey,
more
do you see,
fun. You don't have to look over your shoulder.
yeah,
Damn.
I don't like the excitement because I actually ended up on the wrong side of the law. Like I got my ass beat by a cop and had the fucking shitty experience. But I think anybody who didn't actually have to have the run in and like lived during that era where they were using and like having to hide and run around, like there was a certain sort of excitement to it, I guess. Like, but I don't think that's
yeah,
worth the
did you not see the memes and stuff? What happened to all the really killer good weed? Uh, what was the secret ingredient?
secret
The
ingredient is crime.
illegality. Yeah, the illegality of it. That's what made it so good back in the day.
Dude, I really think part of that is a tolerance thing, right? Because if you're trying to score, like in my case, when I was in Florida, I went from Cali where I had a medical card and I could go to the dispensary and I'd get like three different eighths, like a night or a week or whatever I could afford, and try different stuff by strain name and knew what I was getting. Then I went to grad school in Florida and I was buying it from a dude who was like a gangbanger that like I met through some dude that I worked with over the summer. And I had to drive like 30 minutes to a not so nice area of town where there was like, you know, gang activity that was violent, unfortunately, at times. Thankfully, because I'm fucking nice, apparently, like I always got invited in, and I thought that he just invited everybody in because I don't know why. He must have got a good read on me, and he invited me in like the first time. He had like a pit bull, and he would. I found out later serve a lot of people, including my brother, at the fucking door. He had like a screen door, and he would like take the cash, you take the bag, and get the fuck out of here. And he always invited me in. And fucking Pitbull loved me. His girl was friendly with me, and like we just got along. But that element, to make a long story short, when you have to go through all that, like I was like scraping together $50 to, and I'd say I got 50, and then he'd say bet, and I'd roll through and I'd pick up however much 50 got me. It wasn't even like a this is an eighth, it was like however much whatever he got, it was just that kind of, I didn't know the strain. So with that in mind, I could only smoke so much, right? And when I ran out, there'd be times where I'd be dry for a little bit, maybe a day, maybe a few days, and then you'd smoke again, and you'd get so fucking ripped. And it feels like, oh, this week got me so fucking ripped. It's because you had a 2 day tolerance break because you couldn't afford to smoke, or your guy went out of town, or he got busted, and you had to go to the fucking dude 45 minutes away in the sticks. Like,
Or even strain tolerance. The first time you smoked
Yeah,
it fucking hit you hard, but at the end of the week you smoked it for 6 days now, and now it's not really hitting you as hard as it used to.
you get varying potency anyway, man. I would get shit that the only thing it was good for was a headache, and then like that's when when you got started getting the good weed. Yeah, that's when and now you just get good weed all the time. So
we
it's
do
got to
take
be
that for
better
granted.
than good weed. Yeah,
I think that's pushed our tolerances up too, and it makes us think that the good weed that we have now is not so good because we can just use it all the time, and it's so potent that our THC tolerances and even terpene tolerances go up to a certain
right.
extent.
You smoke
And
with a stranger that doesn't smoke like us, they get fucked up,
people
and we
can't hang.
grow it, so it's even more better.
It's funny, but at the same time, it's like I wish I had that low of a tolerance. Like I wish I could get ripped off of a single joint hit and then put it out and then like come back to it later and like hit it
That's
again,
usually
like
what I
smoke it
say
for
in
a
those
week.
instances to those people. They start to feel embarrassed or whatever. I'm like, no, no, man, I wish I had that. It's a superpower. It saved me so much fucking product. Holy shit.
Exactly. Yeah, if you had to, smoke less and get the same effect. It's like a cheap date, but it's ultimately, yeah, less smoke that's going into your body if you do smoke. I do believe that even if you like filter it through clean bong water with perks and all the different things that you can do to make it as clean, and put a mouthpiece in there with a carbon filter and just try and get the cleanest, ultra smoothest rip, I think that's still going to be harder on your body than like an RSO cap or uh, you know, gel cap edible of some sort that it's like low calorie, low, like, they don't even need to put sugar in the shit anymore. They figured it out. Like you can get your exact dose in little mint tablets, sublingual, like, it's like they've got it all now. I had a THCV powder the other day that was actually pretty good. Um, whatever, micronized, just sort of fast acting. And I was pretty impressed with it. I've been very happy with all the THCV products I've been able to explore and experience.
I want to have to get it tested, but I'm pretty sure that's what Sub used to always say about Vortex was that it had the THCV in it.
It's
Yeah,
known.
so yeah.
A lot of the Jack the Ripper crosses and a lot of Subs stuff that has the um, Space Queen or Space Dude
Yeah.
male has a propensity for THCV, like Jack's Cleaner 2, Jack the Ripper, Vortex. And I think that's why a lot of them have that really crazy soaring high potential where it's just like you could push way over the top, and it almost feels like you're taking a different kind of psychedelic if you smoke too much of it. Like I've talked in the past about how I've gotten heart palpitations, and I had to like tell myself like, oh, it's just weed, dude. Like it's homegrown, clean, good herb, and you're just really fucking high. Like take a breath, calm down. Your heart's racing a little bit, but hearts are able to race. They can
It's a
flutter
good
up for a
way.
bit.
Yeah, it's a good way to explain it because that's what goes on in my head too with the Vortex. When I start getting a little bit too high with it, I'll say, "All right, time to shut. It's time to stop smoking it. You'll be all right."
Because if you don't stop, if you keep on smoking it, you will get higher. It's
Yeah,
not like I can smoke OG all day and I'll get up. It's like I'm at a 0 when I wake up, and I'll get up to like a 5 after my first bowl, and then like a 7 after the second, like 8 after the third, 9 after the fourth, and like maybe 10 out of 10 high after I've smoked like 5 bowls to the face in the morning. But I could smoke a 6, a seventh, and an eighth after I'm at a 10, and I'm not going to an 11. I'm already at my 10. But THCV is like, yeah, you've got a 10 of THC, but THCV is like, haha, motherfucker, there's no cap on this one. There is no ceiling. If you keep on puffing on me, you will get higher and you will get scared. And some people call the cops on themselves.
Some people puke.
Yeah, I've seen that too. I've seen that too. It's the greening out can be uncomfortable, and I don't recommend it. That's why I do think dosing slowly and steadily, and then when you start to feel that way, take a breath, drink some water, maybe eat something that's not cannabis infused, and that can help come down and relax a bit. Makes me think of the reminder of all the old remedies like black pepper can help, CBD can help for if you're too high. They've said like pine nuts and other things, eating a meal just generally, sugar to help just push the process through in your body. Do you have any too high remedies, Sal, or did you have something else you want to jump in there?
No, I was gonna say I forgot when you guys were talking about how the market's gonna go to edibles. I've been seeing a lot of commercials on my IG for cannabis infused beverages, and like, yeah, I don't know if it's like if it's a new thing or what,
I love
but
them, dude. I think they're as good or better
I
than edibles.
drink.
They hit you
Yeah,
quicker.
they're quicker, right?
They
I
hit you
drink
quicker, but they don't
one,
last as long, which I almost feel like
right?
is
That's
probably a
good.
better thing.
Yeah, that's what some people would like that, right?
Dude, I
I
was actually
remember
just
I
about to
did.
talk about
Well,
beverages, not cannabis, but this is like it's called Waterloo, and I was just noticing like it's a blackberry, blueberry, and I think raspberry flavored. Just like it's a 0 calorie water. They just like pump terps into it essentially, and like
there you
other
go.
esters and stuff. But what I noticed is with a couple of them, like the blackberry only, it'll taste real good when you first start drinking, and if you like let it sit, like it will off gas as you drink it, and like by the end, it's almost just like regular sparkling water if you leave it long enough. But with this one in particular, you can almost taste the blueberry first. So the blueberry like floats up to the top, and then you get the raspberry or blackberry, and then one of the other ones is on the bottom. But I just thought that was so interesting that like consistently too. It wasn't like a one-time experience. Like 2 or 3 times that I've drank these, I've been able to tell. Now that I've probably mixed it up a little bit, I might not have the exact experience or whatever. But yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
don't
just
think it's because it's at the bottom, middle, and top. It's just that like the blueberry probably gases off quicker, right?
yeah, maybe it comes off the into the nose or into the mouth at a quicker rate.
And disappears quicker. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
but there are things with liquid weights though. Like if you've, I used to watch a lot of. My wife was a competition bartender for many, many years and made like custom cocktails, and you can do what's called like floating a liquor or something. Like there's like on Fourth of
Yeah.
July they do like red, white, and blue shots. So they'll have
Right.
like blue curacao, which is a certain liquor, and then they'll have like a vodka, which is clear or whatever for like the white, and then they'll mix something in there. And then like a
Mhm.
red, you know,
Yeah. We made helicopters. We called them. So you start out with 2 shots of vodka in the bottom, or no, you want the orange juice on the bottom, and then you put like I think we use a bandana, and you let the vodka drip on top of the orange juice. And then when you just do the whole drink, you don't even taste the vodka. It goes down, and all you get is the orange juice taste. And yeah, I got fucked up many times doing that little deal.
yeah, it's interesting that it can be like a combination of the things like you were talking about. It could be off-gassing and it could also be different like molecular weights and like how it rests. Like if you have water and oil, like the oil floats up to the top and then they
Yeah,
separate. And
definitely.
so these terpene oils, I think, are going to separate from the water to some extent, as much as they try to blend it in there for the drink.
It's carbonated though.
It is when I just opened it, like
Yeah.
this one actually like jutted out because as I was shaking it a little bit to the sides, just like showing it off, I didn't even really like, you think like a little kid, like, shaking up a soda before they open it and it explodes everywhere. I was just like kind of showing the label. And when I opened it, it kind of overflowed just a little bit, like into the rim. And then I could see all these bubbles and like you could smell very strongly the terpenes and esters or whatever else they're putting in there to flavor it. But to the cannabis beverages thing, I think they're a great option.
They're like the dab of the edible world. That's what you're saying. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. Quicker rise, quicker fall. So just like a dab, a quick faster onset. It's not
Oh
instant
yeah,
necessarily. It's in like the first 45 minutes, maybe 30.
dude, mine
Um,
was way quicker because let me tell you my story. So, it was a milk infused product. I went to this like event, and I'm like, yeah, I was like eating everything, but I took it. I just drank the whole thing, boom, because it was hot too, and I was thirsty. So I drank the whole thing, and like within 10 minutes, dude, I could definitely feel it, and I knew it was from that because it was like the only thing that I really added into me at the time, and I was like, wow, man, I'm gonna be fucked up. But it did faded really quick. But I thought it was perfect.
The flavor was good.
Yeah, it tasted just like a creamy milk. It was a
Nice.
cold. Yeah, it was really good. I should have got the name of it, but that was like in 2010 or 11 or something. Yeah, probably 2010.
I think the milk thing, having that fat, could potentially,
Right.
especially if they used like I think it's micronized or some other term, like whatever the way that they infuse it, they
Nano
can
infused,
nano
man.
infusion. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a process. And like the THCV thing, I thought that I felt it in the first like 10 minutes, but it was more minor. Like at 1 hour, I felt it 100%. Like, oh, I'm feeling this for sure. In the first 10 minutes, I was like, I mixed that one with I think they're called liquid IV or some sort of it's like a Gatorade without the sugar that you mix into water. It basically has electrolytes to get you hydrated. And I had probably been a little bit on the dehydrated side from like long hikes and active days the days before. So when I mixed it, I almost thought maybe that little boost of energy I got could have been from just the hydration drink and like there might be less sugar, but I think there's still some sugar in there. So when I felt that little uplift, I was like, is that the edible or was that being a little bit slightly more hydrated when I just needed the water and things? It can be tough to parse out. I think people underestimate their state of well-being and how much that might impact positively or negatively the effect that whatever, you know, caffeine or cannabis they use is going to have a certain impact on them.
Oh, I say do both. Oh,
Oh, for sure.
my favorite.
I think that can definitely be a great combination because the little bit of extra stimulation that can be hard to find in a lot of modern cannabis strains can be easily found in caffeine from any source. You don't need the THCV to get a little pick me up.
I can't believe this whole time. What have we been going? Half hour. It's still not even a question from chat.
I'm just seeing fire emojis and cheers and waves and smoke signals flying through the air.
That's cool. Yeah, it's definitely rolling this whole time. Everybody's cool.
They're
Everybody's
craving the
catching up
science.
the same
I'm
time.
sorry, chat. We have a few scientific articles that we're going to be covering in the next week or so when Matthew and some of the other crew get back on. They suggested them, so I wanted to include them in the conversation on articles that they brought up to our group. So figure that would make for a deeper, probably better understood discussion of those particular things. Not that we couldn't handle it on our own, so I'm sure we're all capable, but I think it can be more fun when somebody who sought it out gets to kind of present it and lead us
Yeah,
through.
for sure.
There is
Uh,
always new and different science though. And we don't like poach other people's like somebody asked like, "Oh, do you like go through like other podcasts?" Like, because I saw some other show covered the same thing you covered, and I was like, it's just that there's only so much cannabis research being done, and when something new comes out, somebody posts it on their Instagram, and then it gets kind of spread throughout the community. And like, I'm not deliberately going and looking for articles on other people's shows or Instagrams or anywhere, but occasionally we will cover some of the same content because we're trying to cover the newest stuff and the most up-to-date stuff. So that's why there's some crossover. And I think that's a good thing because you get different perspectives. Are just like when you give somebody your clone, their grow is going to be different than your grow. If you come to our show, we have, it's growing with my fellow growers. We've got a panel of different people from different states with different perspectives and experience that we all sort of throw our own different takes at it. And you can go to another show, whether it's, one that we have people that go like Spartan to Michigan Bros Grow Show. Like I consider them like brotherly shows, where we got panelists that go out and are on those other shows as well. And then there's other shows that none of us are on that I'm also still a fan of. I still watch a lot of these
Absolutely.
shows like Medical Mondays and Swamp Poker and Crispy Wannabe in the Sundays and Confused. And then I think they have a Wednesday hangout sometimes as well. So it's there's lots of great content out there. And you know what? I meant to do this. Um, I'll put this out there. I want to do like a shout out, like a podcast shout out show, like a giving love to other people while they're here. I don't want to like have to wait for like Subcool to die to celebrate him. I want to say like,
Okay.
hey, Growcast is pretty cool. Check out Jordan River or,
It would be
check out
cool if
these.
it'd be a lot of work, but it'd be cool to take like a 15-second clip from each show and be like, this is why we like this show. It's this kind of show. Boom, play the clip and then talk about the next one. And that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, and if you listen to a show and you organically like, that show and you reach out to them and they're responsive, say, "Hey, the show is going to be doing a little highlight to maybe spread some people out because we only make, you know, 2 hours a week is a lot for some people, but some people will listen to this live and then they're waiting until the next week. And then there's, 7 full days where they've got quote unquote nothing, but there's not nothing. There's tons of other stuff. There's Michigan Bros Grow Show right after this, Medical Mondays, Smart Poker, and there's a lot of stuff going on still. So GML, Hash Church, there's tons and tons of cannabis stuff in the community. And I think
Let's be
it's
buds on Wednesday night.
Let's Be Buds. And shout out to High on Homegrown at Percy's
At
Grow Room.
Homegrown, Thursdays.
Good dudes for sure. And it's funny, like that was actually one where I do follow them and I do watch their stuff. And coincidentally, they've covered some stuff right before us that I was already planning to cover. So I'm like, I'm not gonna not cover it now because they talked about it.
Yeah.
Or like I will watch their stuff and I'll be like, what, they did a great job. Like we don't actually have to cover that necessarily. And like maybe I'll point people in that direction. But I know it's
Yeah,
as much
shout
as
out
we
to
have the
them.
same.
They asked me on their show. I'm going to be on their show on, I think it's Thursday the 18th.
Awesome. I did a recording with them. I'm not sure when it's gonna go live, but they do like the record and then they
Oh, okay.
edit it and then they put it out at some point.
Cool. I've been on a show a couple times before. I always love those guys. They're always cool.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. We got one across the pond and then one over here. I think it's Mackie and Monkey.
Monkey D.
Good dudes for sure. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's great to get people understanding that as much as you may love the show or this might be your number one, there are other shows out there that do a great job. And it could be, some of them are less focused on grow and maybe they have a little bit more on like the political side of things, or maybe they're all grow just like we are, and you just haven't heard of these people yet. Another one is the Future Cannabis Project. They're way
Yeah.
bigger than us and they do a
Two
lot more
channels.
content. But FCPO2, shout out to like Chad Westport and all the shows he's been doing on his own
Chad,
and,
too.
and through there.
Chad's got his own channel too. Yep.
Yeah, Chad Westport's a great YouTube channel. Shout out to him. I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll just improv it. Why might as well just talk about it now. I think about him. I listen to him. I also will say shout out to Medically Fit. He's always still sending me links and
Me
new
too.
articles and science and videos and interesting stuff.
Shout out to Medford.
And they got the well, I don't know, I forget what they're calling it now. It might be the organic wormhole.
Smiley?
On Eagles Garden, yeah, with Smiley, Medically Fit, the pharmacy. I forget the other guy's name, but they're
Yeah.
always on. Yeah,
No, they're
Eagle
doing good
Garden,
work.
yeah.
And shout out to Eagle too. Yeah. Fucking
Yeah.
talking shit with Eagle.
Did we
Doing
say
lots
Smile
of
and Crispy
We Nerd
already?
Worlds.
Yeah,
Smile and Crispy.
yeah,
I think we said that early on. We were talking
Levels,
Yeah,
Levels
yeah.
Grow Room. He's a little newer, but he's got it going on good.
Oh, I'll shout out a big one that they're bigger than us, but I used to listen to them a lot more. Dude Grows. They had
Dude
Scotty
Grows.
Real and the boys.
Yep.
They've done a lot of great content and interviewed a lot of cool breeders and put out. I think Recharge is a good product, and they've put out tons of great podcasts and grow information that's pretty straightforward and honest. And I think fairly scientifically backed. Like a lot of the stuff on the internet that you find might not be so credible, but I'd say that they're one of the good credible sources in the community for the most part. When I listen to them, they seem to give good advice very consistently.
One of the shows that has a good community around it that they have events and they show it big for. So that's a cool one for if you're really into cannabis community. That's one to really check out for that.
High and Lonesome almost like kind of rose to fame through, I feel like, the Dude Grows community. I think they won the Dude Grows Cup and then have come on to become a fairly notable breeder. So it's just cool to see. Like somebody went from home grower with a huge passion to like now they've got a pretty big following and they're crushing it. And everything I see from them, and by all accounts, the flower that people smoke is fantastic. So the Dude Grows Cup, I think one of the cool things was all the growers that enter all get like a single token or whatever, and they go through and you would vote for who you think the best is, the growers that were competing against each other. And sure, it can be gamed a little bit or whatever, but from what I understand, they try
Yeah,
to do
the whole
pretty honest
entire
job.
audience votes on who wins that cup. So I think that's a good way to do it.
Yeah,
Even though
and
it's only a one-time hit, but you get
the smell and look and feel and like depending on how you get to experience it, there obviously is never going to be a perfect cup, and we could all probably say things that we would like to change and adjust. But I think that there's a fun element that does keep the community alive of cups, as much as they might be bought or rigged at times or all often. It's still a time for people to get their product out there in front of people in a slightly competitive, but also more playful, I think, way just to give people the option because so much of it is subjective, right? Like if 10 guys are growing 10 out of 10 fire, like and that's subjective even, but like 10 dudes that have been doing it for a long time, or ladies or whoever, um, just grow some killer shit, but it's all different strains. One's got orange, one's got grape, one's got apricot, one's got blueberry, one's got skunk, one's got garlic, and one's got pure gas, and one's got shit that smells like asphalt. They're totally different, but they're all fire. It's like we're all gonna pick different shit based on what we like. So cups definitely have that going against them, but at the end of the day, it
Yeah.
helps point out who is the high echelon of like I think the Golden Tarp Awards did like uh fruity, gassy, sweet, and then like earthy or something like that. They had like flavor category profiles that you would compete within. So that kind of narrows it down a little bit. But it's cool to see. I think we'll continue to evolve, and I don't think they're gonna go away, but I do think
No,
they've fallen
I
out of
don't know.
favor a lot.
I think when I was early in my career in cannabis, how do I say it? The longer I'm in cannabis, the less value I hold in a cup one. I think is the best way for me to say that. Like early on, looking at a cannabis cup and going to the cannabis cups and is like it was all like I'm a kid in a candy store. I'm just like impressed by everything, and then I got to peek behind the curtain a little bit and a little more longer in the tooth and longer in the beard, I guess. And I see that's not really what I all thought it was. So, and when I really think about it, like, because I get, I don't want to say pressured, but I get asked to do a lot of cups. Like, you want to enter this cup, you want to enter that cup, or do you even want to judge? And I know I refuse to even be a judge. And it's all because my belief of is that my opinion doesn't mean shit. The opinion is the grower and who he's growing it for. Is it a patient? Is it himself? It's the only fucking opinions that matter. And we have different endocannabinoid systems, so the high is going to be different, probably. We have, maybe I'll hate it and they'll like it just for the high, or flavors that I might like or dislike are going to be different for the other person. So, I mean, to be a first time person, maybe entering a cup and then having a panel of judges that you respect, and then that judge is kind of breaking your heart because they just don't get high the same way you do when they smoke the thing. It's just not fair all the way around from the get-go. I think the fairest way to do it is, maybe grow all the same fucking strain, but those are the ones that are the most appealing to me. That's the one I did enter myself as one like that, but I don't know how to solve it to make it like super fair. It just seems to me cups are more either commercialized or dramatized. Two things I usually kind of don't love a whole lot.
It almost has to have those elements, sadly, in life. If something's like not making money, it's hard for people to justify time. Or if there's not some status or allure, a trophy or some sort of credibility that comes along with it, which can lead to, if you're a breeder, more seed sales. If you're a grower, more cannabis sales. It does sway the market's opinion. I'd say I don't want to put a number on it, but there's certainly people that are more followers than anything else, right? And not to like call them sheep or anything. I think that that's easy to be like, oh, these people are sheep. They just follow. A lot of society, like there is going to be leaders and there's going to be followers, and that's not always a bad thing, right? But um, it's easy to influence people, I think. And really, like you said, it doesn't matter at the end of the day if it gets me high and I like it. If it's a caregiver that's growing something and then like their patient hates it or it gives them a bad high or a bad reaction, it really has no bearing.
Yeah, for me, when I see, especially things that really bug me, is like when I see a cannabis competition or a cup and they have celebrity judges. It's just like a judge that I'm like, wow, do they smoke? Some of the things, and it's like, how are they a good judge for how I know we're all different, but come on, so like to me, it's just like it's so like I don't know. There's more involved in there than just let's have a cup and see who we like the most. There's just politics and everything, man. So I just want people that I think it's still fun. I think it would still be fun to enter a cup and just see how, but don't take it seriously. Don't take it to heart. if the fucking roll of the dice don't go your way, like you're somehow a bad grower. Uh, just keep rolling the dice. Don't fuck it. It's not so much a measure of quality, in my opinion, from what I've seen when I see the results of some of these cups. So let me just say that.
Yeah, and like oftentimes it's same day judging multiple samples one after another, after another, after another. So it's like potency
It
is
doesn't
actually not
even
even
matter.
a
It doesn't
considerate.
matter. It's just visual, which to me, in a medicinal or at-home situation, visual doesn't fucking matter. But
Right.
it's all that matters, and that, and then taste and flavor. But yeah.
Some stuff can cut through. I will say, like, you'll be smoking like a bunch of regular THC myrcene crosses, and then you'll smoke that THCV, you know, high pinene one. That's like, whoa, like that gave me a head change, and that can be something that makes something more notable and get a little bit of a higher score. But even then, it's like, is that what I smoke for? Like to take me from one high to another high? It's like, not really. It gave me a head change, and it's impressive, and maybe it was enjoyable. And oftentimes it is when there's something like that. But like you're saying, it doesn't have bearing on who the end user is and what their endocannabinoid system is and what their need for using it is. So, like, there's people that benefit a ton from CBD, smoking it even. And like, I smoke it and it just does not correspond with my medical needs. So, I almost never smoke CBD flower or concentrate because I've tried it hundreds of times at this point, and 100 out of 100 times it's been a terrible experience for me. But I know so many people that that is their pedestal. They stand on. They march behind CBD. They gave it away for free for years, and they're still pushing it hard because it works for them and it helps so many of their patients and the people that they work with. And I'm happy for them. I would never want them to stop. I think that's the beauty of our community is you can find the cannabinoid or cannabinoids that serve you and your patients best and continue to explore because there's even more stuff being found out all the time.
That's what makes a hobby great, right? As a home grower, is that all the new stuff coming out all the time and being able to try it, being able to be part of it. It keeps it fresh and new and I don't know, keeps that fire burning for me anyway.
Or even sitting back and saying, I'm gonna skip this wave. And although that fucking list that I looked at on that seed bank looked so fire, and that breeder is
Oh,
so well known, and those seeds are at a good deal right now, I could totally buy them and I would feel really good. I'd get a little dopamine hit, I'd get them in the mail, and I'd fucking probably make a little post and be stoked. And I've done this many times. But it also feels good to a year later look back at that same list and think, how many of these strains actually became anything notable? Am I
right.
actually glad that I didn't buy that because it was just hype at the time and now it's come and gone and nobody even gives a shit about it. And maybe somebody found a cool pheno in there or something like that, but like not to say that it needs to be hype for you to, enjoy it. You just it's easy to think, oh, I'm FOMO, fear of missing out. I don't want to miss that limited, oh, they're only selling 100 packs or 50 or 10 or whatever it is,
Yeah,
auctioning
exactly.
it off, blah 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 blah. And it's like, well, if it's good, the cut's probably going to get out there at some point. So rest assured that almost every other cut has. So good chances of it purely making it out there, or you getting a good cross of it from a breeder who is like friends or respects or knows the guy who found it or made it, or it ends up working its way into the chain if it becomes notable almost every time. I can't think of a case where it hasn't yet. Probably the
Yeah,
stuff that we never heard of, right? Because it or the
exactly.
person died off and it never gained that notoriety due to another reason to share, right? Because you could have the most killer shit in the whole world
And then it's
and
gone.
then nobody even knows about it, right?
Yeah, exactly. That reminds me, there's been, I don't know if it's just locally or not, but I've talked to several growers now, one of them being my buddy Baked Pone. And they're running into bad batches of root riot cubes where they look the same or ever, but like the cuts just kind of wither and die. And the kind of like the SOP for it, I guess, is to boil them. I guess to boil them before using them. So if you're using root riots, especially in the Michigan area or Midwest, I would boil them before you start or take extra cuts or something. I don't know because yeah, a lot of cuts are being lost right now.
I've been hearing that, but I didn't know the cause or a solution. So it's actually cool to hear that you don't have to just say fuck root riots and go without them
Oh,
because that
right,
might be
right.
somebody's,
Well,
you
somebody might
know,
have a fucking box of 2000 or something stupid.
yeah, yeah, that would be a bummer. And it's like you don't know until you know, right? Like you might have had a good box of 2000, but maybe 1,000 of them are good and 1,000 of them aren't. And you get that first 1,000 that root fine, and then the second 1,000 you're like, nothing is fucking rooting now. Spartan said to boil them. Maybe I'll try it. It's like you got nothing to lose at that point, right? They're not working anyway, so might as well boil off the potential
Right.
bad stuff, and then I might even reinoculate with like a micro plus. Shout out to
Yeah,
Brandon
I don't know
about
what
Shapeworks.
I don't know what it would be like. What does that look like boiling them? I would try to do it outside if I could figure out a way because I imagine it's gonna smell
Not so
pretty
good.
bad. Yeah,
Yeah, because it's like a compressed peat puck, but I don't know how much
there's some
organic
kind of
matter's in
glue.
there.
There's more
Oh, the
than
glue.
peat and some kind of glue stuff. Yeah.
Not good, I would imagine, on the smell front. Maybe a little propane boiler on a little
Yeah,
table
can you
outside.
imagine going to your house and trying to explain to your significant other why the house smells like ass?
Oh,
I
well,
swear it's not weed this time.
Ozium makes a pretty good air freshener. You open up all the windows, throw some fans in there. Or you can like burn popcorn. That was always another good way to cover up the smell if you're like smoking weed in the house and you're gonna get caught. You burn a bag of popcorn in the microwave and then open it up, walk around the house with it. It smells like burnt popcorn, but not weed. So there's a
I bet
high school
bacon's
Jack
better. I like
solution.
bacon
Dude,
better. Burnt
decoy
popcorn's
bacon.
gross, but just
Yeah, it smells terrible. It
cook
smells
some
fucking
bacon.
horrible. Cook some
Bacon will do
bacon.
the same thing. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
bacon will,
decoy
yep.
bacon is that's why he's got that name. Exactly, precisely why.
Baking bacon is actually a solution I think a lot of people don't go with. It's funny that we
So that's if you want to eat and make some really good bacon, is bake it. But if you want to make a stink go away in
on
your
the fry
house,
top, yeah.
yeah, fry that. Fry that and just let it fill up the whole house.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a quick solution as well because get it right up to heat. So
Yeah, then you just put it on a sandwich, make you a bacon sandwich.
hopefully none of us are having to hide our cannabis smells anymore, but there are still people out there, I'm sure, listening to this very show.
Well, children, right? So if their houses that have children in there, you don't want them to make them smell like cannabis. That's kind of a no-no. So you gotta think for everybody.
This is true. This is true. I will say I know there's lots of kids out there that do smell like cannabis and it's not hurting anybody, but they aren't really aware of it until maybe like a teacher like finds out and then they like yell at the parents or something. But it's like in NorCal, like they're growing up on weed farms. So a lot of these kids came to school smelling like herb. It's like everything in their house smells like it. You can't get away from it.
I'm hungry now. No one wants a bacon sandwich.
Shouldn't have started.
Keeper's Guard says BLT. Oh, in the works today.
I'm a turkey club kind of guy. I like
Turkey Club would be good. That sounds good too.
can't go wrong.
Throw a little extra lean protein on there.
I'm a straight turkey guy myself.
I'll eat straight tomato sandwich without anything, just tomato and some mayonnaise. I'll eat out of the garden. Oh,
You got good tomatoes. That's the difference.
so good.
I don't grow my own tomatoes at this current point, so I
Man,
did
there's
have
no
a guy
such
last
thing
night
as
at
a
the
good
birthday
tomato.
party. Showed up with tomatoes homegrown. Shout out to that guy.
Nice.
He's like just walking around handing them out to people. I was like, hell yeah, bro.
Can't wait for mine to start going. They're just starting right now.
It's funny how different the weather is in different regions and when stuff starts to bloom and things like that. You guys are definitely quite a bit further north, and
Yeah.
so it takes a little longer to get that heat going. And you've definitely got the heat now, but it's that summer, and it's got to start cooling down eventually for you guys to get that fruit.
Thank God. I can't wait for the cool down. I've had enough of the heat already.
When
It's-
do you guys typically get cool like September or
Yeah,
August? When
it's
does it
September.
start?
Usually August, July and August usually tend to be our hottest months. And then yeah. But I always hesitate to say things because Michigan's so unpredictable when it's weather. I mean, it's very general when I say things about the weather here because it's crazy shit happens a lot.
Ohio is similar. I think I saw like Ohio's 4 winters or something. It's like the first winter, like actual winter, like second winter, and then
Well,
like you
that's the
think it's
crazy
over
thing.
in
The
third
winters have
winter.
been going away. That's what's been weird with Michigan. The winters have been kind of going away from what I remember. But you brought up Ohio. Somebody earlier brought up if we want to discuss something about the laws in Ohio, and I don't know the laws in Ohio. So That's something I could be educated on, but I don't, I'm not sure
I
what
would
they're.
need to look into it because the people that I know there have, not been necessarily partaking as much, and so they're not on the growing side of things or policy front. I haven't lived there in over a decade, so we did a grow your own Ohio when it legalized a few months back. I remember that was like a couple episode thing, and I often link that to people on X or wherever I hear, how do I start growing? I'm like, listen to this podcast. We tell you everything, how to get started. So I'll shamelessly plug us for that. And I love getting people growing. So that's a real nice, easy way to do it.
Absolutely.
I think going back to cups for a second, sometimes that's one of the best times is in a new state. When things are just coming online, you can start to get to see faces of the people in your community that are the cannabis people, like who is growing, who's making the concentrate, who are the glass blowers, who comes to cannabis events, what types of individuals, like do you know some of these people even? And getting to make friends with those people and maybe getting back out to more events and having reason
Yeah.
to link up.
The people connection for sure. And just one step further is for a grower, as a grower's perspective, is to be able to have access to the breeder. Like if you can go, not I would say over half the booths that I've seen around here anyway, the breeder of the strain is right there. He's the guy selling you the seeds. So all the questions you have about how the plant grows, or maybe how the finished flowers, like, you can ask the guy who bred it right there. You have access to him. And that's huge, especially as a newer grower for me, is like, you're always worried about, man, these seeds are so fucking expensive. And what do I'm already worried about the seeds. Now I'm worried about, somebody going to swindle me out of some crap quality seeds. And, how do I, and to be able to look the guy or the girl in the eye and shake their hands and ask questions was huge for me. Maybe I'm old school, but that was way better than fucking sending cash in the mail to an unknown person.
If you're gonna swindle me, at least do it to my face.
Exactly.
I won't know for 3 or 4 months, but you gave me a good sale, so I will buy these seeds.
Yeah, but they tend to be the same faces too. So as I kept
Yeah, I know
going
they keep
to
showing up.
different events, I would see the same fucking faces. So I'm like, okay, nobody's coming fucking, ran them out. So that's a good sign.
No, I agree. I had the good fortune of getting to bump into Nat from Humboldt Seed Company at one of the events. I just happened to be working, and I walked over and bought a pack of seeds. I'm a fan of his work, and I wouldn't have bought them if it was online because I'm at the point where I've got enough seeds in my seed bank. But because I got to talk to him, shake his hand, like met his daughter, and we had a good conversation. I was looking for a particular strain, didn't have it in stock. He hooked me up with one of the crosses, and one of the things that he was notable for growing the blueberry muffin. And I got the Collie Kush because I was a big fan of the Asphalt OG or the All Gas OG. And couldn't have been a nicer guy. I see a lot of the work that he's putting in it, not just his farm, but many others, and being open with his genetics, sharing them. Sungrown 707 got lots of free seeds and different stuff that he hooked me up with in the past through him as well. So I've seen nothing but good positive things come from him in the community. So it was nice, like you're saying, like if you see that person continue to be around, I've been following him for years. And like you said, no one's coming and knocking down his door. He's at these booths at his event. It's him. It's not some nameless, faceless person with a voice modulator who is selling their seeds and sends some random person to their booth at their event. Because there is at least one person in our community who's doing that still to this day. I'm not gonna name names. I'm not gonna give any more attention than they need, but I still can't believe that is like able to sell people, a nameless, faceless person. But yeah, I won't. I like to keep it on the positive, and when you do see good work, it tends to stick around. And Subcool was another example. Like you just saw him show after show after show. He was throwing out seeds, and like he became sort of an icon, both in life and after. But so many people still love his shit, still grow it. Spartan being one, me being another, and Tao's got a lot of his genetics, like in the Amy Aces. There's Subcool's work with that. Um, I'm blanking.
Cheesequake now. Yep.
Cheesequake, yeah.
Yeah, dude. Subcool tested his beans, and if they didn't test right, he wouldn't sell them. And that's why yeah, that's partly why I use Subcool's gear.
Yeah. And because I also knew that he picked for the flavors, like he wanted really terpy stuff that stood out, and that he suffered from a lung condition, so that he was picking out stuff that he was specifically processing into hash and press it into rosin. It was stuff that he could smoke afterward. It was real like clean and light on his lungs. All of those things are like positives in my book, you know. And it's like, yeah, that's all desirable traits for me. So I love subs gear usually. I love hunting through it anyway.
I think it made for like perfect craft cannabis, like what we would all hope, like the dank. Like that was a perfect term. Like his shit was dank. The, cushes were cushy, the sweet stuff was sweet, and it had a variety from cherry to lemon to orange to fruit cocktail kind of sangria. Like he covered a pretty broad, I think he had 40 something strains by the time he went
So
out.
many, so many. Sweet tea. That's a good one.
Sweet tea, yeah. Cuvee. I mean, lots and lots of really notable stuff. Eagle Gardens is one that I think he grew like 50 of sub strains because he was a tester for him. And so some of the stuff that didn't make the cut is still in like his logs, like I grew this out and it didn't end up even making it. Like I actually wanted to, but unfortunately I think in the shipping the seeds probably got hot or something. I got a 0 out of 10 germ on this Jamaican hash plant. It was like I can't remember the exact cross, but this was when I think Badger was doing some of his stuff. But yeah, it was towards the end, and it was the first set of seeds I got as a tester, and unfortunately got none of them to germ. So that was a short-lived testing process. But it was cool that he even selected me as a tester because to be a tester for sub, you actually had to not just like show a grow of your own, you had to show a grow of your own that was his strain and write a review like he writes a review. He wanted you to give the weeks of finish, the effects, the flavors, photos of it. And it was just like what you would see if you read like the Dank or the Dank 2.0, like how he wrote his stuff. Like I did it with Strawberry Daiquiri and Chernobyl. And he's like, looks dank, like sending out the beans right away. And like I got him like that week. So it was just like a nice thing because I was a fan of him. I found him on Instagram way after I smoked a bunch of his strains. Like in the California market, I was just, smoking Jack the Ripper and Chernobyl, which Slimer became a really notable cutout here. I had never even knew who Sub was until, I got on Instagram and was doing like the Jack Greenstock thing. And I was like, damn, like this is the dude who made that. And then I was like, oh man, he made a lot more shit. And I was like, oh fuck, look at all these forums going back all these years. Like him and Vic fucking talking about super soil recipes in the early, like, wow, man, this is like there's levels to it. Like there's earlier weed tube that was before us, the purge, the early purge where they
Yeah, the
deleted
purge. Oh my God.
almost all the cannabis content off
So
YouTube.
much stuff.
The grow tube roundtables that are gone. Thankfully, a lot of the weed
Yeah.
nerds are still up. Like Subcool's weed nerd, that Eagles weed nerd world is named after, like the weed nerd on like Subcool TJA channels. You can still
Yeah.
watch like those
Yep.
354 or whatever. Like one popped up in my feed the other day. I was actually doing research for 50 Strains of Purple because a couple of his strains are featured in 50 Strains of Purple. And so I was listening to his words and his descriptions about like this plant and like how fire it was. And I was like, I've got my notes, my descriptions, but I'm definitely gonna spice it up with Sub. Like he's so like colorful in his language and the way that he described cannabis, the flavors, the smells, the effects was very I think interesting and
Poetic
captivating.
almost in
Yeah.
a way, you know?
He had a broad vocabulary and he was not afraid to get like vivid in the details. So it was entertaining.
He's like when you put it's like when you smoke something and you're like you have like 5 or 6 words of like, okay, it's this and this. And you put it into the AI and it spits you out a paragraph of fucking cooler sounding shit but saying the same thing. That's what Sub did well. He was the AI. He would just spit that shit out.
Before the actual AI existed to do it. Like now we could just go like, write me a strain description for something that is lemon flavored and very potent. And then it would come out with like, this strain is super lemony, like this candy, and it gives you this effect. But it's like he was definitely ahead of his time and certainly very much missed and well respected amongst our community and many others in this cannabis space. Like all those shows we were talking about earlier, he was on some of them. Grow to Brown Table. Shout out to Doggo or Dago the Hut, however he wanted to call himself.
He branded
But
himself after he took some flack for the first name, Dago, so he switched to Doggo.
yeah, I have a little Italian blood, so I can get away with saying it and not getting in as much
Well,
trouble. And
so
I'm
did
sure he
he, I
can as well.
guess. So, but yeah,
People get mad. People get mad, and it's
yeah.
not politically correct. But yeah, I thought it was a fun play on words. But just like the Cleveland Indians are now the Cleveland Guardians. Things that start off out of respect don't necessarily get looked at with presentism respectfully because what we view in 2024 standards, and we look back to like the 1920s, we're like, oh, this is not right. But like the Cleveland Indians case, like it was because they had Native American players on their team. It was out of respect. We had actual natives. Grew up in Cleveland, went to the games. We had real like high percentage blood individuals, whether it was Cherokee, Iroquois, Erie Indians in the stands beating drums with full headdresses on. And I thought it was special. It was part of our history. We shouldn't erase it. We shouldn't delete it. We shouldn't forget it. Personally, I think it's part of who we are as a country, and history shouldn't be deleted and erased. Like it's important that we know where we come from. And even the messy, ugly, dirty, nasty stuff, back then it might have been the standard. Before we got here, there was like wars and stuff going on. It wasn't just like world peace. So nobody's perfect and nothing ever has been. But I think it's important to reflect on the past and what got us to where we are now. Because if we forget, like the war on cannabis, the early shit that got it banned was racism, shit that's still flaring today.
Yeah, you bury things and then you just tend to, that where they say you forget about it and then history repeats itself, you know?
If it doesn't, it echoes, it's close, right? It's like there's anti this or anti that or bigoted people against this or that gender or race or, orientation. And there's pushes here and back. And it's like, I think unity is definitely the thing. It's funny. George Carlin has a bit about assassination. Who do they kill? It's always the guy that said, like, love each other, unify. JFK, Martin Luther King, Robert F. Kennedy, all these people that are like, just love and come together peacefully, unify. All those people get assassinated. And it's just like kind of crazy, man. That's like the most dangerous message.
That's why the internet's so powerful because people can like now speak to each other and unfiltered a little bit, which is a powerful thing, I think. I think it's cool. I think you can beat racism and things like that if you can log onto your computer and talk to somebody in Spain, for example, to learn Spanish from them or something. You know what I mean? And that now you're finding out all about their culture and you're opening your eyes and you're like, oh, this is cool. And racism dies like that.
I'm optimistic because I've seen it dying, but I also will say it has created echo chambers where people will go into self-fulfilling prophecies and or confirmation biases where it's like I am guilty of this like as anybody else. I think cannabis is a strong medicine and valuable, potent thing. And I think it can help a lot of ailments. So if I see stuff that says cannabis is helpful, I remember it, I take it in and I share it. If I see stuff that says cannabis is bad, I usually look for the biases in the research. I usually discredit it. I usually dig deep into that research. I don't necessarily take it, memorize it, and share it out there with the same type of scrutiny as something that I'll admit it. I have biases like everybody else does. It's easy to succumb to it. At times, I will have people call me out or I'll look into my own sources. And I like to fact check myself. Like some people get annoyed when you Google something or look something up. I think it's good to try and not that it has to be Google DuckDuckGo or whatever search engine you want.
Yeah,
Fact check yourself. Look at the history.
I'm
Look at
with
the
you,
research. Go
Jack.
back and see if that shit that you thought happened actually happened.
I'm in denial about the cannabis hypersensitivity, whatever it is, it's CHS. And after like people talking to me and reading up on some shit, it's probably real. I mean, there's a pathways and all this kind of shit involved, but it definitely could be a real thing. But
Even like lesser than that,
but
the
also,
hypermesis, even like
but,
allergies.
right, it's like an allergy is what I'm, probably it's most common to being like an allergy. But I have a bias, but it's rooted in me trying like doing cannabis all the time, all day for a long time in my life, and I'm still coherent. Like there's a lot of things that I've learned, and the government purposefully lied to us about cannabis. They knew back in like the 1930s that it wasn't the gateway drug and a whole bunch of other facts that they continued to lie about for decades.
I agree with being skeptical on that, and there was a lot of bullshit. That's why I say know the history, look into it. William Randolph Hearst and like what he did and how he used his printing presses to disseminate racist information and false information to demonize not only the cannabis itself, but the people who are using it, which I think is equally as bad or worse in certain cases. So, I mean, it's an awful history, but it's something that we need to learn from and try and never allow it to repeat because the tactics don't go away. I mean, the I've read a lot of stuff about just like journalism on both sides. I think it's terrible. Like if you watch any mainstream media thing and you're not trying to find third party and fourth and fifth parties to verify and cross verify and fact check things, like you're just going to get fed an objective and non-objective narrative. You're going to get fed what they want you to believe, like their side of the story. People have an agenda, and it's every big mainstream news source is guilty of that. I personally think that stuff like the internet, like Spartan is saying, allows independent voices to share what's actually happening when it happens live, and they can give their own experience. We can talk about how you see people like Eagle and Spartan and people that are aging great and healthy and not having big medical ailment. Like if they were heavy
Thank
alcohol
you,
users
Chad.
or opiate users, they'd have much worse
Just
health
call me old.
consequences. Well, I'm saying you're aging gracefully and you're making age look like nothing but a number. And you're still out there active and working. Like there's people that like my dad died at 69. I walk with a lady who's 82 or 83 every morning, It's like just to think like all those extra years that they got. Part of it's a genetic dice roll, but part of it is lifestyle decisions and choices and just dumb luck. You can get hit by a fucking bus or a meteor, Like some people just get real bad luck. But generally, I think uh in your day-to-day life, we have certain choices that we can make that will generally impact our life and our longevity. And a lot of people don't like to take responsibility or accountability at that time at times because like one example is like losing weight. It's easy to say like, oh yeah, you just get to the gym or like eat healthier, but like there's a lot of factors that go into it. Maybe it's not always available, the gym or good food for people, the time, maybe they have to work a bunch and things like that, or maybe they have certain physical ailments or disabilities that make it difficult for them to get the same kind of exercise and things like that. There's so many factors, right? But getting on to a more grow related topic, we have a great question from Genetic Memory Farms, who's a longtime listener and really interesting individual doing cool experiments. So shout out to you, GMF. Spartan Grown at Cheap Home Grow. What do you think about using American Homegrowers Association, like the American Homebrewers Association, to create and sanction local clubs? And then they follow that up with Cheap Home Grow. This would also allow us to fund lawyers for lobbying and home growing. We have nothing now. Well, I'll counter that second point. There is something in that the there's lobbying being done. It might not be by home growers, but by big cannabis organizations. Some of them might be like big tobacco, actually, but there are even like I talk about my wife's company sometimes that she works with, American Weed Company. They have lobbyists that they're working with in Washington to try and get veteran access, and they want to maintain home growers' rights. And they are not the types of people like the MCMA who are fighting against that. They're fighting for home growers to be able to grow it and have access to it in all 50 states. So some people are doing lobbying on the good side of things, but
The
I think
more
it's
examples I want to
fewer
just
and
bring
farther
up
between.
because I love them and I want to always bring them up. But in Michigan, there's the Michigan Weedsters, and they are an organization that absolutely lobbies for us, home growers at the state capitol, at the local level. You see them a lot of times have booths at the local events, pop-up events, even the Michigan Weedsters. They're not exactly set up yet, but they're going to soon be set up to where you can be members for $4.20 a year. So it's not even asking for a lot. Michigan Weedsters. The other one is the Last Prisoner Project, man. I mean, in
I
the
just
best
wrote that in the chat. I was going to say that whenever you're done
okay.
talking.
As I say, the Last Prisoner Project, man, and there's countless examples, but the Last Prisoner Project's another one, and they're doing direct things that help daily. But one of the big ones was what fucking state was that in now? Now I forget where the governor just signed uh papers to release everybody that was incarcerated for non-cannabis or non-violent cannabis crime. I can't remember what state that was in, Minnesota or something.
Good on
Anyway,
whoever did it.
huh?
I said good on whoever did it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'll
I'll,
also
I'll
say
look it
like
up.
shouting out just to Michigan, like you guys got cannabis on your ballot through a people initiative. So like we talked about in past shows, it has to be a 67% supermajority to have it removed from the law because it was a, citizen created proposal, which is a different standard than if a congressman or a senator or whatever proposed a law or a bill that became a law. I think those can be 51% overturned, and they can even be like vetoed and challenged in other legal ways. But because it was done by such a large majority of the people, that showed the power. And another group that I think does a pretty good job, nobody's perfect again, but Normal, I think, has done for a long time a great job trying to lobby for positive cannabis reform in some regard or another, limiting the criminal sentences and providing more access and things like that. But some people, because it's not fully legal, will point at them because they're so large as like being unsuccessful because it hasn't happened yet. And maybe we're getting impatient because it's been so long. But I really feel like we've come a long way despite some of the setbacks here and there. Did you find out which state that was, Spartan? Or did somebody in the chat maybe call it out?
Oh, I'm still looking. No, I'm still looking.
I will say we have to be careful when we read a headline like that because Brandon Rust was incarcerated for manufacturing of cannabis concentrate. And California, when they made Prop 215, claimed that they were going to release all of the nonviolent cannabis criminals, and Brandon was still one of the people that was locked up. So just be cautious that these bills and laws are actually going to do what they say they're going to do on a scale that's not like uh, you get to, but not you. Like it should be across the board, I think, for the nonviolent stuff for sure, at least. Like cultivation is actually sometimes considered worse than like possession, or often, almost always, actually. Cultivation is like a higher metric. So everybody out there, like, know that if you are a grower um, in a state where it is not legal yet, they're gonna whack you way harder than just a smoker or even a dealer in many cases. So that's a unfortunate reality that still looms over many people that may decide to try and cultivate their own in a state that's not fully legal yet.
Found out it was the state of Maryland, and I'm still trying to find like the actual numbers, but it says the Maryland governor, Wes Moore, granted the largest cannabis pardon in the United States. Um, on June 17th of 2024, so it's pretty recent. It was together more than 175,000 convictions will be pardoned. So it was a mass pardon in Maryland. So shout out to Last Prisoner Project for doing the work with Maryland's governor. Shout out to Maryland's governor, and I'm sure everybody else who was involved. I'm sure there's more people.
That is great work, but I will say, to get to their question, I think it might be cool to do a home growers association like the Home Brewers Association. My only concern would be if it turns into something like a homeowners association, where if you give people any amount of power in sanctioning or permitting or whatever to people, then like they get these head trips of like, I'm gonna rule with an iron fist and it's my way or the highway, and like you have to do X, Y, and Z. And if you're not perfect to our standards, then you cannot be involved. Like I think cannabis likes to be pretty like freewheeling and not so ultra regulated in the kind of craft small scale markets. So the more we get things like that, the more I'd worry about regulations. But if we were to create it, then we would propose ideally maybe fairly open rules and policies, as long as you're not using like Eagle 20, right? That's a fairly, the banned stuff is actually probably banned for a good reason, right? So that might be a good thing ultimately. I just I always have a skeptical eye whenever something like this is proposed, because if it does go into being, you want to start off on the right foot. Because if you start off with some whack early policy, it can stick around and be really difficult to get rid of in the long term. We do have a few other questions from Okiegrower. Are any of you guys wanting to weigh in on the last question, or do you want to move it along?
I don't really know if I have much. I would have to see exactly what it meant between American Homegrowers Association, The cannabis folk, at least around here, are pretty how should I say it? They want to know what the fuck where their money's going and what are they getting out of that? And so, if those questions were answered, I guess I think they'd probably be before it, but it's usually a tough sell.
Yeah, I think it's good to want to know where your money's going and what you're getting for it. That's a responsible I think, reasonable request. So ideally, whoever, if it's GMF or us or somebody else who takes upon themselves the task of creating something like this, ideally they do
Right.
it the right way. Noah or Tao, do you guys have any thoughts on the home growing association concept or idea?
Not me, really.
I don't have.
It's all good. We've got a few other questions that I'd be more than happy to move along to. We got one that says, at Cheap Home Grow, can you talk a little bit about breeding, the different terms like F1, F2, BX, IBL, etc.? Yeah, I mean, those are the basics. And just to give a quick rundown, F1 is short for filial generation one, or first generation of like a cross typically. And that's often people will just describe that when you take any two strains and cross them together. So in the case of Velvet Punch, there's Black Velvet Kush, male, that pollinates a Purple Punch, female, and then you get Velvet Punch. Some people would consider that an F1, some people wouldn't, because uh, at certain places, and it's going to get a little overcomplicated, they might consider it only an F1 if there's a pure female and a pure male, like a landrace Afghan crossed to a landrace Thai. That's an F1 because they're two P1 parents. That's a little overcomplicated, but generally just think of an F1 as a cross of two plants. Now, if you take the children of that generation, the seeds from the F1, and then cross those to each other, like a brother and a sister from that offspring, you get what's called filial generation number two, or F2. And then you can do that to F3, F4, F5, and you're just going down the line. Each generation, you're sort of narrowing the gene pool a bit, ideally selecting for certain traits. In cannabis, many times it's color, high, growth pattern, structure, etc. And BX means back cross. IBL means inbred line. An inbred line is like when you would get to like an F5, F6, it starts to have uniformity, but you tend to see less sort of vigor. So the plants will be like all purple and all really short and, smelling like grapes or something, but they might veg really, really slow, and they might, not yield the best, but they're going to have like ultra consistent, like every single 10 out of 10 of those phenos are going to be purple, grape, whatever, and it's going to be the slow vegging, tiny little purple grape stout, whatever. But if you bred that to the green grape plant that you bred to F6, those two might come together and make a really vigorous F1. And the last note that I'll just throw a little onto is the BX, just means back cross. So like in the Velvet Punches case, I had Black Velvet Kush, or Vegan Doja had Black Velvet Kush pollinate the Purple Punch. So that made the F1. If I took a cut of Purple Punch and then pollinated it with Velvet Punch, that would be a back cross, because I'm crossing a strain that's 50% Purple Punch back into a pure Purple Punch. And so you're crossing back to the mother, aka back crossing the line, which makes the offspring have, I think, 75% of the DNA in the first generation be the offspring. So like Cinderella 99 is one that's famous for getting back crossed three times, which got it up to the level of like almost 99% of the DNA was the same, really stable, ideally. But it doesn't always work out that way. There is some selection things that have to go into it, but that is everything that I can say in terms of that question from, I think it was Okiegrower, maybe somebody else, but cheers to whoever asked. And I'll maybe pass it to Tao and see if you want to weigh in on any of
Well,
those others.
yeah. Then I don't know if you mentioned the S ones. If you reverse the plant, then you hit it to itself, because it would be a clone only. That's why you got female. That's why most of the time people reverse it to get pollen from that clone only. And if you hit the same clone with the pollen that it made, it's an S1 because he selfed it. So it had sex with itself. So that's
Yeah, pretty
selfing.
much. It can literally be on
Yeah,
the same plant. Like you could
yeah,
reverse it and then that plant pollinates itself, or you could have two cuts of the same,
right,
like Gorilla Glue 4 and a Gorilla Glue 4 over there. You reverse one all the way and then you pollinate your whole entire room with a, now what is like a female male that'll make feminized
right. And
seed.
then I don't know if there's like there's combinations that I wouldn't know how to explain it, because then if you could have a back cross, an S back cross. Yeah, and then you could also, if you self, the offspring of the self plant, that's like an S2. I don't even know. And then if
They
you
do
back
S2,
that, yeah,
and then there's S3, but those tend to have a lot of infertility issues from the few people that I've
that's
seen
pretty much
breeding into it.
that's why Rita Steve explained it, and I have it written down somewhere where you get to that sterile run of seed because you back cross it to the S1 original, maybe I forget, but yeah, there is a
Yeah, I think
way.
you said 50% by S2 were showing sterile issues, and maybe even like 75% S3 or maybe even higher than that. So a lot of people haven't done like S5s because there's so many infertility issues from what I'm seeing with that. Humboldt Seeds, HSO, I talked about Humboldt Seed Company earlier with Nat, but HSO is another Humboldt Seed selling brand or whatever. They mentioned when they were doing fem work, they liked to cross two females that were different. So like when they made their Blue Dream, they took a Super Silver Haze female and then they crossed that to a Blueberry female, as opposed to doing Blueberry back to itself or Super Silver Haze back to itself. And they were finding a little bit better stability and expression and lesser herms with the essentially like what would be an F1 of feminized seeds, where you're like taking two strains and then like feminized crossing them to each other. I think it still is just an F1 in that case, right? Because you're taking two varieties and crossing them together, but maybe it's not. It's a feminized F1, maybe would be the way to put it. But I've had some real fire in those cases. I've only grown a few fems, but they've been pretty spot on to the expression that I was looking for, and I have not had any herms out of them, so I can't complain. I know that was the initial early complaint about a lot of fem stuff. But does anybody else have any stuff that they want to add into the terminology of breeding?
Not that I could think of. Nope.
Not me.
That's an interesting one for sure. It's I feel like that's more like one that, you can Google it if you want to get the answer on what is F1. It'll give you the exact, terminology. But for all intents and purposes, I think what we just described kind of will give you the general idea. And for the next one, I'll ask somebody else before I go in and answer the question so we can get a little bit of more of the panel participation. I'm going to kick it to Spartan first. This is from Okiegrower. Any tips for keeping rabbits away from your canna or off of your canna?
Yeah, usually I kind of go with fucking the easiest solution here. And if I'm growing outside and I know it's a lot of rabbits around, or I know there's rabbit pest pressure, I'm gonna I'm gonna put them in one more bigger size pot. I'm gonna transplant one more bigger size pot than what I normally do before I put them outside because I'm gonna put a taller, bigger plant out there. Just, a rabbit is detrimental to a cannabis plant when it's really small, but once you get up there, it can't reach anything. So you're pretty much okay. So the best way, instead of trying to fight the stupid rabbits, let them just switch to clover, which is easier for them to get to. Maybe plant a clover patch nearby. But yeah, just put them out there. Like if you're putting them out there in solo cups and you're planting them that early, don't do that. Put them in a one gal and let them get a foot tall before you put them out there. And I think they're gonna fare better if it's just a bigger plant.
Yeah, a rabbit can only gnaw through so much of a stalk, and shit, the wind might be more dangerous to your plants than the rabbit at a certain point. I just saw somebody's plant get like the top 3 feet ripped off by a strong wind. It's like it literally looked like it got tomahawked, and like the plant was just like laying on the side. I almost thought like you could clone that, but I saw Tao on mute there. You wanted to jump in?
I know this guy. I'll take care of it. Elmer J. Fudd. He's a hunter. He takes out the rabbits, man.
Be very quiet. They took away his gun. He's no longer has a little rifle in the cartoon. Same with the guy with the mustache, and he used to. I think it's something Sam.
Yosemite
Yosemite
Sam.
Sam. Yeah, he doesn't have them either.
Dude, well, that generation that watched the cartoons with the guns in it didn't shoot anybody. What the hell is going on? We got to put them back. Maybe they'll stop shooting people again.
Yeah, that's the gun safety that we need is the Looney Tunes.
Oh my
Elmer
goodness, this
Fudd.
world is insane, dudes.
They're like twisting barrels around, like cartoon, like shooting themselves in the face, and it like there's like a little
Yeah,
black smoke, and they're fine.
I know it's really way off topic, but I saw this clip on IG. The chick was explaining how she never comprehended why Tom is always chasing Jerry. You know, Tom and Jerry. She's like, "Oh, it's a mouse and a cat. And cats chase mouses. Now I get it." I'm like, dude, yeah. She was like fully grown person. It wasn't like she was a little person. You know what I'm
Yeah, that's
saying?
like the today I learned thing. It's like it's funny people sometimes don't connect those things. But like another funny kind of Tom and Jerry related story. But the only cat I ever had as a child was my brother. He's a great guy. We were young. He might have been less than 10 years old. My parents had the cat and they like brought it out and he'd never seen the cat before in his life. But as soon as he saw it, he yelled, Tom, like he is like been best friends with this cat. Like I think they told him it was like a male cat, but he just like immediately is like Tom and they're like what? It's like Tom, that's the name of the cat. And so immediately like our only that thing was gangster, man. I saw it run up a tree 20 feet up. It was an indoor outdoor cat. And it ran down a branch, jumped off onto a crow that was flying through the air, got it by its wings, bit its neck, and rode it down to the ground and like ate it alive. Like fucked it up and just like left its carcass there. It didn't even really eat it. It just like killed it. It's just fucking cats are so savage. If
It's
you let them out of
fucking
your house, they'll
insane.
kill everything.
Other species hunt for sport too. Apparently, there you go.
Even like orcas, I think well they'll kill sharks and eat just like the liver. Nature's wild. They'll even knock down if you go out on a yacht, they'll take you down. They discovered a new species of orca like last year. I think that's wild. Like you would think it's like some jellyfish down like thousands of feet. It's like no, it's a fucking massive orca that has to breathe all the time. And we just discovered a new one. Like we're still finding new shit out all the time.
Yeah, I stand by my comments. I'm staying the fuck out of the ocean.
I don't blame you. I live right next to it. I haven't been in a long time.
I'll stay in the
Nate,
shallows, dude. That's all.
nature is hella savage.
Yeah, it is.
It looks like you've got a blur effect or something on Noah. I can see like there's a garden in the background, but
What's up with a
Oh man,
grinder or
what
something?
the heck?
I think it's your it's like when you do it's like a bokeh effect or something. It's like the
Probably still have your background on.
on like iPhone, it's like a portrait mode almost, but Zoom has like a
Dude,
little
Because you have a blurred background right now.
Ugh. Shit.
it's all good. We'll have Noah's Garden on in here in just a little bit. But yeah, Tao, it's interesting. I've here in San Diego and like I used to lobster dive and first day of lobster season a few years ago, some 13-year-old kid got bit by a great white like just a few feet off the shore right here, like in my hometown where I live. And my wife's like, you're not lobster diving anymore. I'll fucking buy them. I'll buy it
Jesus.
at the grocery store. It's not worth it. So
Aren't
yeah.
they like bees? If you don't fuck with them, they won't fuck with you. No, I
I don't
guess
think
not.
so. They mistake you for
Think that
seals.
you think that kid
You
was
know?
fucking harassing a great white shark 2 feet from shore?
No, dude, he was diving down and they thought it was a seal going to eat the,
Ah,
lobster. It's like you don't come to my water and take my food.
Yeah, I'll let him live there.
I think you're
I'll
clear now,
stay.
Noah, if you want. It looks like the blur effect went away. So if you want to
Yeah,
walk
okay.
us through the garden.
there you go.
Yeah, we can see it now.
yeah. Chunks.
Yeah, this phone sometimes it's a really old one, but it works. Yeah,
If it ain't
same
broke,
ones I
don't
had
fix
last
it.
week. Yeah, I washed this thing and the home button doesn't work, but the phone still works, so I use it for Zoom. Yeah, this is my last T1000 right here. I decided if I'm gonna run it around again. This is an Oreos. This is that original Forum Girl Scout cookie I got. This is kind of on the outside of these dosilatos, quite a bit bigger leaf structure and then thinner leaves than this one. But yeah, I feed my plants pretty organic stuff. It looks kind of like this right here. So I this right here, this is a really big plant and a 7. I used to give it about a half. I hand water everything. I always have. One of these days I'll get one of those dripper systems, but for now I just do everything by hand. So
Much respect, Noah, man. I always love seeing the garden, and anybody who's still hand watering this many years into the game has a lot of love and passion for it. And if it, like I said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Shit, I hand watered for a long time. I still actually do hand water. I'm in a
That's
earth
it.
box.
Me too. I'm still doing that.
Nothing
I
wrong
love
with
the
that.
boxes.
It
Not
works.
sips, whatever you want to call them.
It makes you pay attention to your plants. Because you can kind of get coaxed into this false sense of security, like, oh, my watering system's taking care of things. I just gotta make sure I check my res once a week or twice, however often. And we've got our buddy, he goes away for months at a time, and then his stuff takes care of itself. What's his name? He's buddy of Dr. MJ. He's out there, not Automation is Freedom, but
XYZ
XYZ
Vector.
Vector. Yep.
So see factor.
So some people can make it work, but I personally like the hands-on, eyes-on, multiple times a day, ideally. If I could be with my plants 2 or 3 times a day, that's the best. I'll do
Yeah.
better than if I look at them once a week, Obviously, it's makes sense, but you just got to put the time and work in.
Yeah, it's time and work, but I mean, in today's environment, being able to know securely where you're getting your weed, what's gone into it, what's not gone into it, more importantly, and also the cost. Pretty hard to beat, my costs, and I would even assume, it's even cheaper for a tent grower. So, yeah.
And it does take time, but I think it's a good way to spend your time. That's a good
Oh,
way
I
to
love
spend
it.
It's a good hobby, and I think it's good for your mental health too.
I
So
agree.
look at it as an investment in your own mental health, even if you want to look at it that way. But yeah, you can carve one off. Not you can carve out enough time to at least grow one plant. You don't have to grow everything. Start with one. Just grow one plant and see how you do. But everybody should be growing at least one, I think.
It's that, like I was talking earlier, when you take that seed that was an inert object before, something sealed up in a little pack with a label on it, and maybe a description that sounds interesting, but you took it and you applied the water, you gave it a medium, you gave it light, and you brought it to life. And now that is your relationship to cultivate or destroy. You can let it die and wither out, or you can nurse it and take care of it and let it grow up big and strong, and it can reward you. Like I said earlier, it could literally become your whole future, your career. Like I don't think Josie expected Gorilla Glue to become something that was a massive part of his life and like retirement as a crane operator, right? This dude was just like, I can finally smoke weed again. I'm gonna grow my own shit and like get the fire. And then he found some really dank shit and gave it out to a bunch of people in Michigan and all over the world. And now he's still remembered and loved. And I'll always shout him out because, you don't have to be a multi-million-dollar facility doing 10,000 plant hunts. You can do a small batch runs and find killer shit.
Yep. Love that. That's
The
what
home,
keeps me forever pheno hunting, right? It's that allure of finding the next cool thing.
well, and like Noah just said, like the tent grower, he's in a full-size room. He was just talking about the benefits of a tent grower having usually lower costs, which is generally the case. If you're just growing for yourself on a little small personal batch, you usually got one, maybe 2 or 3 lights. You've got less investment than a room. But even like Spartan's growing for himself and he's got a room set up. So it's all different levels. And don't I will say, just like, because I'm still there and I get shit from people all the time. They're like, what do you know? You're just a fucking tent grower. Bleh. Like, whatever, dude. Like, let people say what they want to say. It's a
Grower.
grow room
Everyone's a
that you can break
grower.
down and bring with you. They're cheap and very, very effective. That's what, like, what this show is all about. Like a grow tent is literally like the cheap home grow master cheat lock. Like it just lets you jump right into growing. All you need is a light, a tent, and a pot, some media, and a seed.
And one
Like
of the best solutions for like when you're renting, not everybody owns the place they're in. So, you know what I mean? You can't like build out a fucking room. You
most people
can't.
don't own at this point. It's crazy. It's sad, but even like some of the big luxury houses are being rented, dude. Like I can't even believe it when I see like some of the people like, oh, they're renting that house. If it comes out like in like their divorce hearing or whatever, unfortunately. Yeah, but it's like, holy shit, I didn't think that this, you know, person of whatever sort of public figure status would be renting that place, but a lot of people do. And I don't hold it. I'm fucking renting, so I'm not going to hold it against anybody. It's tough to afford to own depending on where you live. my home state of Ohio, which I left, is one of the most affordable states to live in. There's like a map and it shows like the average home price. I'm like,
Cleveland
wow.
specifically.
Oh yeah, that's where I'm from.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. They just got the best or lowest cost of living. I just read an article about that.
My brother, you wouldn't believe what he bought a house on Lake Erie for, bro. I'll tell you after the show. But like it's been reappraised because he put work into it, but like unbelievable. Like you could buy a car. And granted, there's like multi-million-dollar cars out there, right? But like a regular old car for what people are getting. Multi-story, multi-bedroom houses that like have bones. They're not like tear downs. They're not shit boxes. Like it was a house that he put a little bit of work into and is now a beautiful home. And I'm so
Better
happy
get
for him.
some better weed laws and then that'll change, right?
Right.
As
Well,
they
we'll
keep
see.
relaxing. So that's perfect time. Your brother got in at the right time. Now you
I
can
think it's a
flip that in 10
purple
years.
state, and not to get into politics, but I think you have to have disagreement because that brings out the best ideas in people. If you have one side dominate everything, the extremes don't bring out the best. You get echo chambers. So if you have people fighting against each other saying, "Hey, we'll only do this if you do that," a little bit of tit for tat, like it makes people bring out their best shit and sacrifice some of the stuff that's not as important necessarily. And I think generally that can work out well. Like the people in Ohio have some of the lowest home prices, so they can afford to live there. So that's a benefit, but that's some political jargon, and I don't want to get into that realm of things. But it's just something that a lot of people can probably relate to in that state. I will say, like, I left because of the cannabis law. That is the exclusive reason for the most part. I do like the weather. I do like California for other reasons, but mainly weather and the people. There's a lot of really nice, cool people out here, despite what you might hear, depending on what channels you watch. Most people are actually really fucking cool. And I would challenge anybody to find a state, more beautiful. I think there's states that are I think everything's kind of, Michigan's beautiful, Ohio's beautiful in its own ways. Every state has its own beauty, but we've got a little bit of everything from the deserts to the coasts to the, snow to the forest. Like we have pretty much everything here. And but that goes for most of America. I guess some states over like Arizona where it's more desert, even that has beauty.
No, only the West and East Coast get the ocean. New York, if you're in the right spot in New York, dude,
But dude,
Oh, you
the
mean
lakes,
the ocean that I can only look at? I'll take the fucking Great Lakes all day, brother.
yo,
warmer,
down in New
cleaner.
York, you go in the ocean right now, it'd be perfect.
What's the temp
No,
like?
it'd be salty and gross. I got the Great
Well, it
Lakes,
would be
man.
salty, but dude, the
Yeah.
ocean is the great exfoliating cleanse of your body.
It's great for your skin.
It
I
really
gotta
is.
say
Yeah.
that is for sure.
But
Unless
yeah, dude, it gets into the 70s. Like it's when it's the hottest, the water's cold. That's what you want. You don't want to
Yeah,
go into
sure.
piss warm water. Yeah, it really is.
you gotta be
That's
refreshing.
why it's so expensive. And that East End of Long Island, dude, it's just stupid. I mean, literally, like stupid. The pricing on that property. It doesn't even have to have a building on it. It's just insane. But I
Yeah,
digress.
Washington State's gotten pretty crazy on our property prices, and yeah, that we're pretty close to the coast here in Washington State, and yeah, don't move here. It sucks.
I'm watching a show with my wife. It's called like Buying New York or Selling New York or something. They've got like this $250 million penthouse in like Central Park. It's like some crazy amount of square footage or whatever at the top of this tower that like looks right over Central Park. It's like 10 beds or something, but I'm like, who's spending $250 million on this thing? I can't wait to see what it's actually going to sell for. They had some big house out here in LA called The One that was supposed to be like a 200+ million dollar house. Ended up selling for like 120 million in like foreclosure because the guy who was building it like didn't end up, making right with all of his bankers. And then they're like, hey, like, you got to sell this thing or pay us back. And they're like, he's like, I'm going to sell it for this. And like, did these little documentaries about it you can watch on YouTube. It's kind of interesting. The guy's quirky. The house is, I've actually driven past it. Me and Lady G had an event right down the street. So I drove past it like 3 or 4 times. It's fucking huge. It's like 4 or 5 houses squished into one house.
Oh my
And
gosh.
they're never going to have that again because I guess Hollywood, the way that they zone things, you can't have over X amount of square feet on a lot anymore. And so this is like gonna be the biggest house forever in that area, unless they change the laws eventually. But
Well, that's gonna
interesting.
sell for a lot.
Oh yeah, I think it has already since changed hands again for like 150 or 170 or something. But
Jesus. Wow.
crazy life. something in Orange County just sold for a similar dollar value, 168 million. So
Come to an easier life. Come to Michiganja. We'll accept you guys. I don't
speaking
think
of
we got.
Michiganja, in 15 minutes, the Michigan Bros Grow Show starts, which means Spartan Grown has to maybe take care of his dogs, get himself something to drink, refill his smoke tray, and get ready for that show. So, Spartan, any final thoughts and shout outs before you get going?
Oh, just, I just think, I'm going to reiterate it again till dad die probably, but I think the best thing we can do is just grow our own stuff, right? And the best way we can do it, it doesn't have to be like the cheapest way. You could take pride and splurge here and there, but even when you do things like there's a cheaper way to do it. There's like a frugal way to do it. And yeah, get the best things for your plants, and then you're gonna get the best results. Gold in, gold out. Yeah, growing your own food is like printing your own money. Absolutely right. And it's fucking it's the to me it's the gateway drug to growing more plants, man. I love growing vegetables and herbs and flowers and fucking I'm not a big fan of growing grass, but I'm a fan of harvesting grass and mulch and using it for mulch and things like that, so I don't have to weed. Anyways, I'm going on and on. I love you guys. Much love and keep growing.
Peace out, Spartan.
Always great having you, Spartan. Thank you so much.
Keep growing.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure having Spartan Grow. Make sure to check out the Michigan Bros Grow Show if you haven't already. They're going to be on in about 15 minutes. We've still got a little bit of time left, and we have another question that we didn't get to yet from Okiegrower. I did, my brother, I think, maybe sent me that, or maybe I sent him that little, I pulled up a little cartoon that said, growing your own food is like printing your own money. And I felt that way when I first started growing cannabis. It was just like, this feels like they said money doesn't grow on trees, but I mean, at the time in Cleveland, it was
That's the
$7,000 a
closest.
pound.
Yeah, dude. It definitely is the closest.
It felt real damn close. And even now in California, when I started growing again in the, late 2010s, uh, getting the Jack Greenstock page up and going, just like pulling down that first few ounces. I was like, what I was paying to smoke eighths or quarters or whatever, like picking stuff up from the medical shops, or even like buddies that I met eventually in my earlier growing times, picking up from them. You're spending money on it. So like if you can spend money
Sweet.
on inputs and then like have it be $1 a gram versus $5 or $10 a gram, it's just like you're saving so much. So it still feels like you're printing money to some extent. The only thing that makes me not trip out about my electric bill went from like 50 to like $200 when I started growing. But I was like, okay, well, I can have a crop every 3 months. So that means I spend 150, 300, 450 on my electricity for the cycle. And then my inputs cost, whatever. So 500 or 600 bucks maybe. And if I get, however many ounces, then I'm at least breaking even at the very least. And if I
And
do well,
shit's legit and clean.
yeah, you chose what the strain is, you chose what the media
Right.
was, you chose what the lighting is, you chose the fan, you chose the pot, you chose everything if you have full control.
Yeah.
Like,
Have you gotten a little less on that, like with new lights and
well, I've actually, since I switched from CMH to LED, I've like the ROIs have been insane and
right?
my cost has gone down. So I've hit 2 grams per watt on a couple of harvests, which to me is, I didn't think that was actually even possible for a while. And then when I finally did, I was like, holy shit, this is actually possible. Um, I don't necessarily think it's like the most efficient use of my space. I know it like sounds crazy to think I'd rather get like 1.5 or 1.75 grams per watt and have a larger total than 2 grams per watt and have a smaller total. In like certain grows, I was doing stuff to try and like stress test or do push efficiencies and things like that. And I was like just surprised by the ultimate results. I'm tripping out. Sorry, I have like an alarm going off somewhere in the background. I'm trying to figure out what the hell that sound is. But hopefully it's not coming through too loud on the microphone or anything. But yeah, I think when you start to grow your own, you can ROI on your equipment relatively quick. And then at that point, it almost feels like that whole money printing system because like you've paid off your bills for the light, for the tent, for the pots. And then you use those every single time. All you're doing is like replacing the soil or the nutrients or whatever it is. So you've got a fairly known or set input costs that might go up a little bit over time, like we've seen over the last few years. But other than that, it's like once you dial in your system, you've got a pretty much money saving operation. It's not necessarily making you money because it's just money that you would have maybe spent otherwise elsewhere. But I think a dollar saved is a dollar earned. And it's something that you can reinvest either in your grow or in yourself. And a lot of people in society just, I know I'm not alone in this at times where we live month to month, paycheck to paycheck, and people get debt. It's part of life in this modern society. Things are tough. There's emergencies that happen. And so people have to accommodate somehow. And I think growing is one way that people can start to dial in counting all those costs, understanding budgeting, and saving themselves money and starting to maybe get ahead in other ways in life. Like it helped me in more ways than just growing. Like it made me evaluate my taxes a little bit more closely. It made me evaluate my transportation systems a little bit more closely. And in doing all those things, like my quality of life has improved. My sort of access to things has gotten better. My understanding of how systems work has gotten better. So growing has helped me in so many ways. Like from I I would take more than 9 minutes that we have left to go on and list all the different things that it has taught me over the past several years. But I'm just really grateful that in so many ways it forces you to sort of grow as a person, not just like the plants that you're growing, but mentally and emotionally, spiritually, every single way that I can really think of. I'm gonna walk away for a minute because I gotta go figure out what the fuck this alarm is.
Yeah, that's one thing I realized. Trying to grow really good weed, you have to learn so many things. You should know a little bit about electricity. Then when you get your bugs, you got to learn about the bugs and what you got to do about them. Uh, and then, yeah, then you get to the lighting, which is just changed constantly. So, yeah, there's a lot involved when you think you're just going to plant a plant, but it's not as difficult as everybody or some people make it out to seem. Even to start, you can start out small. Like a lot of people start out small and they reinvest, and then they build up to whatever they want to do.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yep.
And another way you can do it is, you know what I mean? Especially if you're just starting like from seed or whatever, you can just, with a tent, it'll probably take you, I don't know, 6 weeks to, maybe even 2 months if you want to backlog them, veg them pretty good. And then, so you can pull a harvest down, even if you're starting from seed every 4 months. If you get a decent light, decent setup, you should be able to get, 12 ounces at least per, 4x4 tent, maybe more if you really get a good light, you maximize your stuff, get good yielding stuff. So I mean, how much food do you need every 4 months? That's 3 ounces a month. And if you need to sell or not sell, use a little bit to help you with your costs, then you would have a little bit. I mean, an ounce a month, a couple ounces a month should be enough for someone to smoke, but even three, if you're a heavy smoker, you use it for making edibles or whatever you're doing. So, I mean, anybody can do it.
Oh yeah, it definitely, there's so many ways to do it. There's not just one path. There's many different media and inputs, and so everybody can find their own way of doing it. But ultimately, it teaches us all a little bit of business acumen and ways to save. Speaking of growing, we do have a question from Okiegrower who asked, Keep Home Grow, would potting up be a good solution for overwatering? And I'm gonna pass that to Noah.
Well, you know what? I would say no. I would definitely say no, that potting up would not, in my opinion, be a good solution for overwatering. I mean, it could be, but I mean, if you're if you're, up potting because of the site, like I was just saying, like if you want to like veg a plant for a long time, but like I've seen a lot of people make mistakes with a bigger pot, putting too much water in it, not realizing that, especially when you just put a plant into that, like a 7 gallon, if you do it from like a 1 or 2, which I have done, but especially if you're kind of a rookie, you don't, you have to realize that the roots aren't really on the outside. You really only have to kind of water a little bit the center every time. You could focus on, soak the whole thing really big, but overwatering is more of a problem than people think. That's a mistake I see a lot of people make. But over potting, up potting, I mean, it's also what's your experience level. You know what I mean? For an experienced grower, somebody who really knows what, you know what I mean? Like that's like just one of the things I see. Like you can really tell. There's a couple different ways to tell, but if you just by looking, if you've done it enough, you can usually tell. But if you really are worried and you're growing in soil, just pick the pot up. If it's really heavy, it doesn't need water. If it's light, it needs water. That's the rule of thumb that I always use. So.
I think that's a good one, especially from a guy who's been hand watering as long as you have. And when I used that rule, had great results. I know cocoa can kind of be wet almost all the time. So if you're in cocoa, like you can get away with more high frequency fertigations, but not everybody's going to be able to make that work, especially without like watering systems. And so I tend to agree with Noah that up potting can actually be a problem and cause more overwatering because no matter what, even if you filled your whole pot and it's like a 1 gallon and you go to a 3, which is like a normal step, like a 1 to a 7 is a big step. And like Noah's saying, you would have to be way more
Big
careful going
step.
from 1 to a 7. 1 to 3, you could kind of treat it just like it was in the 1 and like water the whole pot, let it dry out. And after the first watering, the roots are going to grow out most of the way into that 3, that if you just start watering the rest of it normally, that you're going to fill up pretty much the whole pot. But if you did that with a 7, you'd have to like wait like a week and a half for it to dry out, or you'd be like, if you watered it every day with that full soak, you'd be overwatering it and start to cause problems. And so I think up potting too soon can cause more overwatering. I think that if you are in a like situation where you're starting to get root bound, you're sort of gonna have to transplant out regardless. And I would just say try and discipline yourself and get into that pot lifting system that Noah was talking about, where you can feel, okay, when I just watered it, it weighs this much. And if I wait until it droops, which is fine to do once, like late in flower or in veg, it's okay to have it happen once and just don't make a habit of it. Then you'll know, okay, it can actually go over a week without water in some cases. People think that it needs water every day or multiple times a day. I saw people when they first started growing watering it 2, 3 times a day in soil just because they like saw the topsoil would dry out. Well, you gotta stick that pinky down in there or lift up the pot and like feel the sides of the pot. Or if it's not a fabric pot, you can, lifting it, get an idea of how waterlogged that media might be. But it's something that takes experience. You can't get that overnight. And then a first time grower is not going to be able to have that understanding unless they maybe listen to a podcast that helps inform them of something like that. But I'm curious, Tao, do you have any thoughts or ideas on Okiegrower's question? Would up
Yeah,
potting be a good solution for overwatering?
I do have some thoughts. It depends on really what caused the water and how bad it is, because if there's root damage at the bottom of that container already, if it's like rotten, that would be really bad. Um, but yeah, like you two said, up potting wouldn't help really, because then you're just adding more mass. It's like starting a seed in a 10-gallon container. It doesn't promote growth. So depending on how bad it is, yeah. But I would, if you have it in a catch tray, first off, like that's not good if it's overwatered. So I would put something underneath it so that it's not sitting in water. No way. And if there is any water left, like there'd be an airspace underneath it somehow. And you might want to consider pulling it out, trimming the roots off the bottom and around the edges, putting a little fresh dirt in, and put it in the same size container. But I wouldn't even do that. Just let it dry out. And yeah, for starters, like people that are just starting, maybe the best idea is to, if they transplant into a properly sized transplanted container, like a 3 gallon into a 5 gallon, water it good and wait, and don't water it again until you see the leaves droop. And then that would be a good way to know. And you could also check how heavy it is every day or whatever. And then you could, that would be a better way than overwatering it, because I was guilty of overwatering plenty of time, and there's no recuperation once you fuck that plant up from overwatering to a certain point. There's no comeback. So yeah, that's what I would say about all that.
Yeah, stunted overwatered plants don't perform as well as one that was healthy all the way through veg. That's for sure. And so you don't want to put yourself in that situation. So avoid it the best you can. Thank you so much, Tyler. That was great advice, and you as well, Noah. We've wrapped up, I think, at this point. We're coming to the final minute of the show, so I'll pass it to Noah, or yeah, Noah the grower for final thoughts and shout out.
Yeah, I had a great show. Great time listening to everybody talk. Great time talking. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I'm Noah the Grow on Instagram. You can find me there. I'll see everybody next week.
Cheers, Noah. Thank you so much for joining us. And last and certainly not least of my panelists this evening, the American one.
Yeah, shout out to you, Jack, for the hosting all the time. And Spartan, Noah, always good to see you. Everyone else that we didn't have today, shout out to everyone in chat. I'm the American one. Most of you know where to find me, and we'll all catch you next week. Peace.
Peace and love for sure. Hopefully everybody has a safe and healthy week and comes back next week and we have more fun stuff to talk about. Maybe some scientific stuff. I think on the science front, I think maybe it was Poops 420 or somebody else was doing like they were measuring their pot weights where like they would water it. It was a dude grows somebody in the dude grows community, but they were like auto watering and they would literally measure the weight of the pot and like when it would dry back, they would know like the weight when it was
Yeah,
dry versus when it was wet.
that's a dude on GML, dude. He has scales under every container, dude. And
Crazy.
that's how it does the watering. Scale under every container, and it works. So he knows.
That's really interesting, you know, and the amount of control that something like that can offer is interesting. And going to the whole overwatering thing, I think the drybacks is something that could be taken advantage of and made benefit of. And smaller pots make that easier. The wet dry process, I think a smaller pot, getting the roots fully filled out in that container can help prevent overwatering and teach good watering practices. With that said, you can find me at Jack Greenstock on Instagram. I'm hardly there anymore other than just answering DMs and maybe posting a story here and there. Jack_Greenstock is my account on X, where I will be posting this show tomorrow morning or afternoon, depending on where you're at. Yeah, and that's my backup account on Instagram because they still delete cannabis pages. Unfortunately, that's why I do not post over there anymore. You can find me right here every Sunday, and you can find my website 50strains.com where I've still got a few books left. I'm trying my hardest to finish up Purple this month. So we'll do pre-order on that pretty soon. And I still got seeds available for those in the US, 24% off everything on the website for everybody in the US. Peace and love, everybody. Like I said, hope you all have a safe one. Happy, healthy week, and we will catch you all next week. Peace and love. Keep on growing, and cheers, everybody.
Keep growing.